He was taken from the jungle as a baby, watched his mother get killed, chained up, silenced, forgotten. Years later, that same chimpanzee was living free on a wild island, strong, adapted, far from humans. Until the day he heard a familiar voice across the river. What happened next? No one saw coming. Among dozens of animals, he stopped, locked eyes, walked straight toward a man, and hugged him. But the most moving part wasn't the hug, it was the silence between them. A memory that crossed years, distances, and species. The video went viral worldwide, but the story behind it, what really happened behind the scenes of that reunion, has never been told like this. Why did this chimpanzee recognize that man? And what does that gesture say about the bonds we create, even with those who don't speak our language? Nobody heard the crying. The forest drowned it all with its thick, green, indifferent canopy. But there, among broken branches and rope still wet with blood, a tiny body trembled. The baby chimpanzee couldn't have been more than 2 years old. His wide eyes and shallow breaths showed more than fear. There was a kind of helplessness that doesn't come out in sounds, only in silences that stretch too long. The old truck he was trapped in carried more than live cargo. It carried broken stories, ripped from the wild. Animal traffickers worked that part of Cameroon like the jungle was an open market. To them, that baby was just another valuable item. His future might have been an illegal zoo, or worse, some cold, quiet apartment on the other side of the world. But something unexpected happened. An operation led by an international NGO, alongside local authorities, stopped the transport on a dirt road near the Sanaga River. Amid crates, shouts, and frightened eyes, there he was. The smallest, the quietest. And it was that very silence that caught the attention of Fabrice, one of the volunteers on the rescue team. Fabrice wasn't much of a talker, but he had a sharp eye and a heart that broke easily at human cruelty. When his eyes met the baby's, time seemed to freeze for a moment. Neither moved, no sound broke through. It was as if something there whispered, "Don't leave yet." The chimpanzee didn't resist the touch. He let Fabrice wrap him in a towel. Not because he trusted, but because he had no strength left to fight. His fragile fingers clung to the fabric like someone holding onto the last thread of the world. It was the start of a powerful story. But no one there could have imagined how much that quiet rescue would change everything, because in that forest that seems to swallow memories, something had survived. A bond, and bonds like that don't fade with time. What do you do with a broken life? That was the unspoken question hanging over Fabrice's shoulders in those first days. The chimpanzee, named Citron, wasn't eating well. He had nightmares. Sometimes he'd scream in the middle of sleep, not cries for help, but memories, etched in his skin, carved into his soul. The rehabilitation center wasn't a cold place with cages and strict rules. Far from it. There, the wild began to heal from human cruelty, with patience, with care, with respect. Fabrice would show up early. He'd sit next to Citron on the dirt floor of the enclosure, not touching, not pushing, just there. He brought fresh fruit, spoke softly, sometimes sang, and little by little, the distance between them shrank. First came the glance, then a hesitant move closer, until one day in the middle of the afternoon, Citron reached out and grabbed Fabrice's fingers. He didn't pull, didn't swing, just held on, like he was saying, "I'm still here." From that moment, everything changed. They started taking walks along the sanctuary's trails, slow but steady steps. Citron would jump at the sound of birds, the rustle of leaves, the freedom that still felt too strange. Fabrice never forced him. He respected his pace, set up little challenges with hidden fruit, logs to climb, nets to swing on. It wasn't training. It was a quiet conversation between two beings trying to remember what it means to be alive. Months passed. Citron gained weight, strength, a spark in his eyes. He started playing with other young chimps, making sounds, exploring. But the most striking change wasn't physical. It was the trust growing, a kind of invisible bond, stronger than any chain. A connection built on care and the simplest gestures, feeding, protecting, listening. Some days Fabrice would sit under a tree and just watch Citron play with the others. And every now and then, like a secret ritual, the little chimpanzee would look back, just to make sure his human was still there. But no healing story is complete without a turning point. And in that place, as warm as it was, Citron couldn't stay forever. The moment Fabrice dreaded most was coming. The wild was calling him back. Reintroducing an animal to the wild isn't just opening a gate and hoping they run free. It's a delicate, almost sacred process, teaching a soul to remember where it came from, even when it's forgotten the way. Citron was ready. At least, that's what the clinical report said. He fed himself, got along with others, showed independent behavior. But there was something the reports couldn't measure, the bond. And it was that bond that still tied Citron to solid ground and to Fabrice. The NGO worked with a reintroduction model that respected natural cycles. 3 river islands on the Sanaga, Pongo Songo, Okokong, and Yatu served as halfway homes. There, the chimpanzees could live in semi-freedom, watched from a distance until they were ready to stop looking back. Citron was taken to Pongo Island. The crossing was quiet. Fabrice rowed slowly, as if trying to stretch out the moment. Citron watched everything. The eyes that once shook with fear now seemed to be asking, "Where am I going? And why?" When they arrived, he hesitated. The canoe gently bumped the shore, and for a few seconds, Citron stayed still. Then, like an ancient instinct kicked in, he leapt to solid ground. His feet hit the earth, and the forest's silence was broken only by the crunch of branches under his steps. He walked a few meters and looked back. Fabrice didn't wave, he just stood there, like a tree, present, silent, and maybe that's why so unforgettable. Days passed, and the work ramped up. Caretakers crossed the river daily to bring fruit, observe behaviors, make sure no animal was left out. Citron, now among the others, started showing signs of adapting. He fought over coconuts, stole bananas, mimicked sounds. But something about him stood out. Whenever he heard Fabrice's voice among the visitors, he'd lift his head. He'd search. He still remembered, and that memory seemed to carry something deeper, a recognition that went beyond instinct. But nature doesn't bend to human emotions. It teaches you to walk without ties, to forget, or does it? Because one day, something happened. An unexpected gesture, a reaction no one could have predicted. And everything they'd lived through, every shared fruit, every quiet moment, came rushing back. Some memories don't fade. They just hide, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. It had been over 3 years since Citron last set foot on the mainland camp. Since then, he'd been living on Pongo Island, where he'd become one of the group's quiet leaders. Strong, alert, but reserved. There was a stillness in him that didn't match the other chimpanzees, as if something was tucked away deep in his eyes. Then, the unexpected happened. Papaya International, the NGO, was organizing a documentation visit to the site. The goal was to record the progress of the rehabilitated chimpanzees. Among the names on the team crossing the river that day was one Citron knew well, even if he didn't realize it yet. Fabrice Mudung. The canoe arrived early. The sound of oars cutting through the water was the same as years before. Fabrice stepped off quietly, as always. He carried some fruit, but what he really brought was time. Time built up. Time that separates and connects. In the distance, Citron was sitting near a tree, his eyes half closed, tuned to the breeze. Nothing seemed different until suddenly he froze. His head turned slowly, his gaze locked onto something. In that exact moment, The silence grew heavier. Citron stood up. He didn't run. He walked. Each step felt like it carried decades. The other chimpanzees watched, confused. He crossed the open field, climbed a small rise, and stopped in front of Fabrice. What happened next wasn't rehearsed. It couldn't be. Citron reached out, touched Fabrice's face, and hugged him. Not with force, but with a gentleness that could break any human armor. Fabrice closed his eyes. His body trembled, but not from fear. It was too much bottled-up emotion. The moment was caught on camera by one of the volunteers, and days later it went viral online. But those who were there knew no image could capture what really happened, because it wasn't just a reunion, it was a recognition. Citron hadn't forgotten. He hadn't let go. And in that simple, heartfelt gesture, he proved something science is still trying to understand. True bonds don't unravel with time. They just sleep, and when they wake, they transform everything around them. But that wouldn't be the last surprise of the day, because what Citron did next would shift even more of what we thought about the connection between humans and wild animals. Some encounters don't need words. They just linger, hanging in time like echoes of something bigger. Since the reunion, something shifted in Citron's behavior. He kept living in semi-freedom on Pongo Island, but now there was a ritual no one quite understood. Every time the boat approached the river dock with the caretakers, he'd sit in the same spot, facing the shore, and wait. It didn't matter if Fabrice was coming that day or not, he just waited, as if he was waiting for more than a face, maybe a reunion with himself. It was in that space between gesture and waiting that researchers started to notice what François Elimbi, the sanctuary manager, called the memory of care. It's so powerful. It means he still recognizes who looked after him. It's a moment that gives you chills. And it did give chills, because Citron wasn't the only one. Over the years, other chimpanzees showed similar behaviors, but none with the clarity and persistence of Citron. The reunion video had already spread worldwide, and with it came a question no one could ignore. If a wild animal can remember someone who cared for them with such tenderness, what else are we underestimating in the life pulsing around us? Pexabay International began using Citron's story as a symbol, a reminder that rescuing goes beyond saving a physical life. It's about restoring trust, rebuilding the invisible. Fabrice, meanwhile, started getting letters. People from all over the world shared how the story touched something in them. Some had lost loved ones, others cared for rescued animals, but they all seemed to understand the same thing. The bond between human and animal isn't just nice, it's sacred. And that's what lingered. Not the fame, not the viral video, but the gesture, the hug, the silent memory that stands up to time, to forgetting, to human logic. On the last recorded visit, when Fabrice approached the island and called his name, Citron appeared from among the branches, older, stronger, but with the same spark in his eyes. And he did something different. He didn't just hug. This time, he held Fabrice's hand and didn't let go, as if to say, "I know you, and I still need you." But was that the end of the story? Or just the start of something that can't be measured, just felt? In nature, almost everything is instinct. But what Citron did was a choice. He could have ignored it, run off, blended in with the others, but he walked to Fabrice, touched his face, and in that simple act, revealed something many humans still struggle to offer: recognition. What does this story stir in you? Do you believe animals also miss the ones who love them? Are we the ones forgetting how to build real bonds? If this story touched something in you, share it, because stories like this aren't just beautiful, they're necessary. And if you believe that real connections between humans and animals can change lives, subscribe. This channel is a safe space for stories with soul. Stories that don't shout, but transform in the right time, with the right gesture, in the silence that says it all.